Hello and welcome to How a Secondment Added Value to My Career, the story of Kara Specht, hosted by Virtual Patent Gateway and moderated by VPG's digital strategist, Victoria Wesley. Ms. Specht has experience in all aspects of patent litigation before district courts, the International Trade Commission, and the Federal Circuit. And in 2019, she spent 5 months serving as an in-house litigation counsel for a large technology company. Victoria, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. Hi, Kara. Thank you for joining us and sharing your story and experience. So I personally do not have a law background. So could you explain to me and to everyone listening what a secondment is?
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and be able to talk about my experience. And so just so everybody knows, a secondment is kind of an opportunity to work in-house at a company. It's usually a client of whatever law firm you work at. So in my case, somebody at the company had gone on maternity leave, and rather than hire a new full-time person, they reached out to their outside counsel firms and asked if they would loan an attorney to work in-house for a period of time. So this is how I landed in-house for a 5-month stay.
Yeah, very cool. So with that, you still work for your firm, but you're also working in-house. How would you describe the, I guess, complexity between knowing where your boundaries or loyalties are as far as, I guess, who gets final say on the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the threshold issues that I had when I was offered this opportunity was, am I going to have to switch employers? This is going to affect my health insurance. It didn't. So I remained an employee of the law firm, and they gave me basically a contractor position with the company. So for a short period of time, I had kind of a pseudo contractor position where the company I was working in-house for paid the firm for my time, but my employment status stayed the same with the law firm. So then to your question, do you kind of have two bosses? The answer was yes. But I was fortunate enough that I had a few conversations before leaving the firm and basically said, hey, I think it's best for everybody if during my time there, I'm able to dedicate myself fully and participate in my tasks as if I was a part of the company, an employee of the company, and any old member of the team over there. So I was able to remove my firm email from my cell phone, which was really nice. I did still check those emails daily, of course, just to make sure nothing crazy was going on, but really tried not to work on any cases that were not assigned to me, as part of my in-house role. So I tried really to distance myself from the firm and dedicate myself fully to my tasks in-house, where I was assigned, a supervising attorney, the same as anybody else on the team. And it was a great kind of experience to have, because I was treated and integrated into the team just like any full-time attorney. So even though I had this contractor status, I was given a boss, we had weekly one-on-ones, I was assigned cases as part of the rotation, I was participating in internal meetings. So it really was an opportunity, even though I had kind of this triangle of responsibilities, to really focus on something new and step away from the firm.
Yeah, that is great and important to be able to dive in more fully instead of just being half in, half out. How would you say that your work was different in-house compared to working with the firm?
Yeah, so this was one where there was a lot of unknown for me getting started. So I was offered this opportunity. It was like a Thursday afternoon at like 5 p.m. I was on my way home. And, they wanted me to start in 2 weeks. And this left a lot of unknowns. The biggest one for me being, what will I be doing? Who will I be working for? Am I prepared? Do I have the right knowledge base, the right experience base to be effective and successful? And what I quickly learned is, doing work as outside counsel, the daily work I was doing at my firm, really was good preparation for in-house work. Now, not for everything, of course, because the responsibilities were very different. So for example, what I did at the time and continue to do in my daily practice is a lot of hands-on. You have a particular case, you're responsible for meeting all the deadlines, for managing all the communication with opposing counsel, with the court, briefs, strategy development, all of that kind of in the weeds, hands-on, doing what's best to win the case and making sure you're positioning yourself for success for that case. My in-house responsibilities were a bit higher level. I didn't do any of the hands-on work myself. I was responsible for managing outside counsel, so kind of switch hats from my usual job, and make sure that they were doing all the things that I normally do and overseeing those. So a lot of the job was much more management based and a lot less hands-on, drafting kind of work. I also had the opportunity to participate in a lot of stuff that I didn't get to see at all as outside counsel. So, counsel selection for one, handling a whole bunch of cases that might have overlapping issues and trying to steer the company in the right direction for, business goals. If you have 10 different cases and they have overlapping issues, how is that impacting your daily business? How are you making sure you're consistent across all of those? The strategy comes at a much higher level in-house. It's not just how do we win this case, it's right. What are we doing to make sure our business is successful? And that was something that I think as outside counsel, you're always aware of that, but to see it and to really experience how to understand those and how to go, how to ask the right questions, was something that I did not appreciate fully, I don't think, until I worked in-house. And I'll give you one other thing that I thought was super interesting that I had the opportunity to work on, and that's some lobbying efforts, especially in patent, the patent space. One of the senators is trying to introduce a new bill right now. There's always turmoil at the PTAB, and there's always a lot of considerations and a lot of groups. And as outside counsel, I participate in some of this through bar organizations, but it's not quite the same as what you're able to do in-house, where there is opportunity to submit, amicus briefs, for example, or notice and comment on new proposed legislation. You don't really do a lot of that as a firm. And I did have the opportunity to see kind of the decision-making process and how that plays into an overall business strategy, which was super interesting as well.
Yeah, it is very interesting that the in-house perspective has you having to align your work with their, business values and trying to make sure that what you do matches that and that it can fight, for their business, not just for your firm. So I guess that would be a consideration. Do you have any pros and cons? Anything you liked, disliked?
There's pros and cons to everything. Some of the big pros, I will say, for in-house was the diversity and people that you get to work with. Right. So I got to work with engineers. I got to work with lawyers in different departments, privacy counsel, counsel that works for particular products, engineers that work on all sorts of stuff that are brilliant and have been working on their area for, decades. And you get a little bit of that as outside counsel, but that really was one of my main roles as in-house counsel. Was we have discovery requests. Who do we go to get the information? How do we make sure we're putting our best arguments forward and coming up with positions for the case? And you have to go to the engineers for that, which was, I consider that a big pro, the ability to work with so many different people and not just lawyers. Cons, there's always cons in every job, right? Mm-hmm. As outside counsel, you have to enter your time and deal with billing. In-house counsel has kind of its own twist to that of managing budgets and dealing with, reporting issues and just kind of like the, bureaucracy that comes along with large companies. It's there for large firms. It's just different. So it's the cons, I think, were quite small. The pros were pretty big. Now there's pros to being in an outside counsel position as well. I missed the hands-on brief drafting, right in the weeds of considering claim constructions and that sort of low-level strategy. You don't see as much of it. You still have to supervise it, but you're not involved in the first round decision making. You're not the one reading the patent, trying to pull out, the technical details. Somebody else is doing that first, and you're kind of overseeing it. And I really do enjoy that part of the work, or you get a brief from somebody and you think, man, I would have written this differently. I wish I was the one that had been able to do this, and it's not bad. It's just different than the style that you would have done. And so my biggest con, I guess, would be that I missed the hands-on nature of outside counsel. Like I really missed being, the front line of making strategy calls for your particular case and issues.
Right. And do you think from that, like it caused you to maybe think differently about your career path going forward, or where you were going to go from that experience?
Yeah, any kind of experience, I think, gives you opportunity to reflect on where you are and where you'd like to go. I think a lot of people do secondments and realize that in-house is the place for them. I worked with people while I was there that had started as secondees who were always like, will you be staying? Are you gonna try to get a position? And I of course considered opportunities, but in the end decided that going back to a firm was the right call for me, because I like doing this type of work. I liked the I just liked the adversarial nature of court cases, and I missed it, to be honest with you. And the management, now maybe my perspective would have changed, and I now manage teams of attorneys at my firm, and it is a bit closer, but I miss my day job, and it maybe I didn't appreciate all the things that I enjoyed about working at a law firm before going in-house. But then, of course, you go back to your normal day job and you think, man, I really missed those people that I was working with, or I miss having the ability to speak with engineers daily, or whatever it may be. So it absolutely caused me to reflect on my career choices, and at very least, I know that I am in the right profession. I don't think I would want to do anything but patent law. And in-house and outside counsel, I think, are different sides of the same coin. And I have landed back on the outside, which is the right spot for me.
Yeah. And with going back to, I guess, learning different business strategies, were you able to take any of that kind of information as far as like maybe managing and bring it back when you went to the firm, maybe thinking differently about how you do things, or maybe envisioning different ways to do things by learning business strategy?
Yeah, that's extremely helpful, and something that I've tried to integrate more into my daily practice. So, I think a lot of people probably expected, you go in-house at a company and you learn how it works and you learn its business concerns, and you come back and maybe you can work more effectively for that client. And that absolutely is true. And I am able to do that. I hope they would agree. But what I've tried to do is take that knowledge and ask important questions of other clients, right? So not for this client where I know how some things work, but for another one where I don't. Now I know what to ask. Well, what are you guys arguing in your other cases? What are some issues that you see? What are some aspects of the law that are important to you and that are impacting your daily business? Those sorts of considerations that you can use to learn about other clients, even when you don't have direct in-house experience. You can know to ask. And I think a lot of folks that work as outside counsel get bogged down in this case and winning this case, or maybe the 3 cases they have for a client, or whatever it may be, and don't always ask the questions. And I have found that most clients appreciate at least the perspective to know that your desires might be different than mine. How do we line them up? How do we use this case to advance your business goals? And that, I think, is extremely important, especially if you're working with, not just a low-level in-house person like I was, but if you have calls with general counsels or things like that at a high level, that they're very business oriented. They appreciate those questions and that you're aware of those concerns. So I found that to be very helpful for me.
Yeah. And do you feel like this opportunity, like in what ways do you feel like it made you maybe a better lawyer or expanded your career in any way?
Yeah, that's a very good one. So I think it's made me a better lawyer in a bunch of different ways. At least I sure hope that it has.
Yeah.
You're only getting my perspective, but I hope people would agree. Number one, we were just talking about being oriented to clients' business concerns, and I think that has been something that's really helped to advance my, the level at which I can connect with clients, and so my career path. The other thing that I found really helpful was, in-house, I was managing a lot of different firms, large and small, a lot of different attorneys with different backgrounds and different, all doing intellectual property work, but all from different kind of walks of life and stages of career. And I got to see a lot of different styles and hear a lot of different ideas. So instead of working on 2 or 3 cases with 3 people, I was managing maybe 5 or 6 cases, and we had teams of 5 to 10 lawyers on each of those that were sending me work product and discussing strategy with me. And so to have kind of so many different ideas and so many different styles presented, I think I learned a lot about how I would like to operate and how I would like to practice. Here are some arguments I never would have thought of that turned out to work really well. Well, maybe I can take those and use them going forward. Here's a particular brief that I thought was really effective. What's the style that they used? Can I adopt something like that? And the reverse as well. I don't like this at all. I don't want to do something like that. So I tried to use the opportunity of managing a lot of different people to kind of, patchwork quilt together ideas that I want to use in my practice going forward.
Yeah. And how does one, I guess, get assigned to a secondment? And can it be something you do multiple times, or is it just like a one-time opportunity? Is there specific things that you should do if you want to pursue that as an option?
So I think it's very company by company. And I know a lot of companies, especially large technology companies, offer these positions to their outside counsel from time to time. I know that my firm has done them with many companies. I've only done the one. I don't think there's a rule that says you can't do more than one, but every time you step away from your firm or from your daily job, you're losing the experience that you normally would have there, right? So it's a bit of I saw it as a bit of a trade-off. Like I'm gaining some skills over here, but I'm not having the experiences I would have if I had stayed for these 5 months.
Mhm.
The more times you step away, is it valuable the second time? Possibly, but I didn't want to be too far removed from my firm and from what I wanted to continue to work on. Now, how you get placed in one, I think is very up in the air and very company and firm dependent. I can say that I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to be a secondee because of the work I've been doing for this client. So I was about a 5th year associate. I think that's right. Maybe coming up on 6, somewhere in that range. And I think mid-level associates are normally the target that companies like to use. You have enough experience that you're not just learning how to practice law, you know what to do, you've been in depositions, you've written a brief, or if it's a prosecution type secondment, I know we've done those as well, how to conduct an examiner interview and write an office action response. Like you're no longer learning the job. And so you're ripe for them to kind of teach you something new on top of it. And you're not cost prohibitive. And it's easy for you to step away, I think, from your firm during those mid-level associate years. Obviously a partner can't just say, other clients, I can't work for you, I'm going to go do this. I think it's much more difficult if you get too advanced to find the time to do it and to make space for it. So I think I was about a 5th-year associate. I think mid-level is generally the prime time for this kind of an opportunity. And then, like I mentioned, I was doing a lot of work for this client. And so I think it was helpful that, and just happenstance that they were looking for somebody and I happened to be working for them. But it's helpful if you already know the folks. So I was offered to do this because I'd been working with some of the in-house people on the team that I would be joining. And so it kind of felt like you might be a good fit. You're already getting along with a couple of these people. You've been working with them. You know a little bit about the cases that they're doing because you've been working on them. And that kind of opened the door for me. So, advice for somebody looking to get involved is just to keep options open. Work for as many clients as you can and get to know as many people. Networking is always the answer in these things, and it used to drive me nuts, but here I am telling you that networking is. And I don't think it hurts to say to partners or whoever you work for that would be something you'd be interested in doing. Maybe the opportunity doesn't present, but I've never found that it hurts to ask for anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you can weigh the opportunity cost by leaving the firm, that you could almost make it make sense. And as far as, I guess, networking goes, so you got to network with not only just other people in law, but you got to network with engineers and other people who were in-house. How was that experience, and how do you feel like that benefited you in the future?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things, I think, about working in-house was the different people I was able to connect with. And, from returning to my firm, I feel like a lot of people that, assumed you went to a client, now everybody at this one client. And that's great. And I do, not everybody, but, I did make a lot of great connections at one client. But some of the most valuable connections that I was able to make were other attorneys at law firms. So people that I was managing as in-house counsel, they were my outside counsel. And I was able to make some very good connections and have a few leadership positions with bar organizations and things that I was invited to join by people that worked for me, if you will, while I was in-house and have, I've stayed in touch with since. So I would definitely not write off, even at general legal networking events. You go to these, and a lot of times I think lawyers from firms only want to mingle with in-house attorneys. They only see opportunities from people who are able to hand out work right at that moment. And I think it was a good lesson for me to learn that some of the valuable connections I made, they're still at law firms, but they still are good people to know. And hopefully I'm providing value to their careers and they're providing some to me. And you never know where they'll land in 10 years or 15 years. And, I think it's just important. And I learned that it was important to never undervalue any connections and never go in with certain assumptions that, these are the important people for me to meet. You don't know. So you can just try to meet as many people as you can and develop relationships where you can.
Yeah, I think that is super important. Do you have any, I guess, tips on how to keep a connection or connections that you've made without, I guess, being too intrusive? I'm just thinking of general career tips for people who maybe are nervous to network or don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, everybody does this differently. And I'm like a pretty hardcore introvert, so I am not usually one to overdo. I always think like, am I sending too many emails? Am I annoying somebody? But the rule of thumb that I have tried to use to maintain connections is just, if you see somebody something that makes you think of somebody, shoot them a note. So if I read an article and I think, wow, this is a lot like that one case I was working on with so-and-so, I might send it to him and say, hey, thought of you this morning. Or I sent one email once, like I was reading some prior art about JavaScript and remembered that one case we worked on and just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. So I always try to use, some people I'm sure would say this isn't the best approach because it's not necessarily regular. You know, I'm not going to tell you once a month I send an email to all my contacts. Like that would be great, but I try to do it a bit more naturally.
Mhm.
So it feels genuine, and it's not just like, you know, it's the 28th, and I always get an article from Kara on the 28th, whether it's relevant or not. She's going to tell me she thought of me. Like I try to make sure that, you know, it's something that I really thought of the person about. And I hope that fewer meaningful connections like that are better than a lot of shallow, just let me make sure that I'm getting my monthly email out to these 10 people that I want to stay in touch with, you know. And I have found that if something doesn't remind me of somebody, eventually the day will come where I think, man, you know who I haven't thought of in a while? And then I can message them and say, you know, I was just thinking about how we haven't talked in a while. And then you're right back into a genuine, thoughtful connection, just based on lack of communication sometimes. So that's usually my approach, is just to try to keep it as, you know, as organic as you can.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think of more questions, but I guess I'll ask Ashley. Do we want to do question and answers? Anybody have more questions? Yep. Okay. So I am opening up to anybody's questions. We can put them in the chat and I can ask them. That one makes anyone more comfortable. I can also think of random things to ask. I know you went on a trip to Japan with Ashley, so we had that in our promo. Very fun. Yes. How has travel improved your career path?
I mean, I wish I had traveled more, you know, and now I'm stuck at home and can't get out of the country. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely regretting not taking more trips to Japan with Ashley. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay. Just waiting for some questions.
I'm going to speak up. So,
Yeah.
well, a couple of questions that I have is, first of all, I want to thank Kara for speaking, you know, being one of our speakers today. I've actually worked with her for quite a while. And one of the person that I'm really fond of. So I've actually been very impressed with this particular, you know, chat. And I wanted to, and I've seen a lot of growth from the first time that I met you. And I wanted to see and check with you about, in terms of personal development, team building, leadership skills, how has your secondment, like there's a lot of a holistic view that I can see that you have actually developed. You can see it from different angle, and make you appreciate a lot more about your work at the firm. So in terms of personal development and mentoring, how have you like implement this and help like others that has not kind of had that experience and pay it forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually one that I was just talking to somebody else the other day about. So I think I've said many times that one of my roles as in-house counsel was managing outside counsel. And that wasn't something that I was used to doing, as a fifth-year associate. Maybe I had a first-year associate that was doing a task or two, but managing teams was not something that I was quite comfortable doing. And I felt pretty junior to be managing outside counsel as in-house, like how do you get somebody who's a very senior lead counsel on the phone and say, I have questions about this. I don't understand. Is this the right strategy? It felt very uncomfortable at first to have the confidence to go to somebody and say, you can't just do what you're told. You have to have your own opinions and question where you think questioning is due. And that doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong, but it was very uncomfortable for me to have those sorts of conversations with people that I normally felt like I would be reporting to and should be taking instruction from. Now I'm in the chair of giving the instructions. And, I met with one of my supervisors who was like, you just have to do it and just tell them what you think. And you'd be shocked. They're not going to question you. They're going to say, okay, or they're going to explain it in a way that you can understand. And after you have these talks with them a couple of times and you realize that, people really do respect your opinions and you have value to add, it helps to build a confidence that I've tried to maintain, so now I do try to lead teams of attorneys, even at the firm. And I feel a lot more confident saying this is what we're going to do. This is the strategy that I think is best. I've ran it by these other folks. They agree. This is what we're doing. And I never before probably would have been so, as I say, probably in the sentence, so definitive to make up my mind like that, right? Like it was very difficult for me to say, this is what I think, so that is what's right. I've done my due diligence. I've pressure tested the points, and this is the best course of action that I think, and we're going to do it and tell people to do it. And it was really hard for me to learn that. And I feel like that maybe, I gave you a lot of skills that I think were most valuable for me, but maybe this is the one that really has helped me the most. And I think it does impact, I know this didn't sound like mentoring, but I'm going to loop it back in there now. It has helped me to teach other people how to practice. I always like to joke that I learned everything I know from Ashley, and now I am hopefully teaching some other people these things. I have the confidence to say, this isn't great. This is what we need to do with it. Here's how you put together your argument. Here's how I like to do these things and teach others those sorts of skills. Here's how you manage the docket. That I definitely learned from Ashley. I teach that to people now. So I am hopefully paying forward the knowledge that Ashley has given to me and the experiences that I've built, over the years and try to, educate and mentor people in kind of a coaching sort of relationship. And I know we've been focusing on a professional kind of coaching, but, I've always been involved with personal kinds of coaching as well. And I know that's extremely important to Ashley in the Virtual Patent Gateway. And, I try to get involved in our summer programs. I try to meet everybody that comes through the door. If there's an interviewee that's coming in for an interview, I try to interview them, for all the reasons we've been talking about here. Hopefully I have something to add to their, to their perspective, and hopefully I can learn something from them. And so I try to be involved on all different levels and pay it forward as best I can.
It's such a proud moment. Well, I think, so Victoria, Holly has some questions. Do you mind,
I will ask them. Yes. So we have a few questions from Holly. So when you were working within another company, do you think that improved your long-term relationship with them?
Yeah, I mean, of course it did. Both for me and hopefully for the firm as well, because I know that was kind of an investment on both of our parts. And in terms of an edge, I think both your questions go together. Learning how a company works, of course, gives you an edge, because now I can say, I understand how this particular piece of technology that's at issue works, because I was there. I interviewed the engineers right alongside you. I have done that. But it also helps for, the business goals like we were talking about. I understand some of the different positions there, some of the high level concerns that exist. It also, has helped with even very small things like, and this is what I told people, I think about a lot of stuff when I first returned was, we don't recognize a lot of times how much little things either help or hurt, so if you can learn, like, people at this particular company really like documents formatted in this way, or they really, dislike, when you send them stuff on Fridays, or when I'm making these up, but whatever things that might seem small to me, really help or hurt their daily experiences. And so if you can just ask, it all comes back, I think, to open lines of communication. If you can ask, what's most helpful? When do you want to receive this? How do you like to see it? When you're collecting information for discovery responses, how would you like us to go about that? Do you want to be involved? Do you not want to be involved? And you can tailor to people's particular needs instead of just saying, this is how I run my cases, because even within the company that I was at for 5 months, each person there had different things that they preferred or didn't prefer as well. And so, I think maybe you think, now you know how this company works, and that's all true. But I also just learned the idea that everybody is different. Even if you think you know a company, if it's somebody new that you haven't worked for, ask and see how they like things done, because it really is a minor inconvenience for me to reformat something. And it really improves the relationship and shows that you're going that, very small extra step that means a lot to cater to somebody's preference in-house.
Okay, yeah. So learning different traditions and just cultural preferences is really important. So we have another question from Ryan, and he asked, what can you take from your secondment that you can put into practice at a trial?
Oh, Ryan, this is a tough one because I did not go to a trial during my secondment. I did attend PTAB arguments, however, so I'll give you kind of a different flavor to your question. And it was actually the first PTAB argument I had the privilege of attending, and I had not written the petitions. It was, a different firm. It was, I only got involved fairly late, but was in charge of preparing the outside counsel, conducting mock arguments, getting them ready. I flew to it was held in Denver. I flew to Denver to attend the hearing in person. And even though I wasn't supposed to be second chairing, I could not resist like jotting notes to hand up and help. And so, I guess for me, it was great to have kind of a low pressure exposure to those. Like, not that it was low pressure, we wanted to win, of course, but I wasn't the one arguing. I wasn't the one second chair. I really had done all I could do beforehand, and I was just there to observe and really could soak in the experience and what worked and what didn't work, and learn kind of through osmosis like that. In terms of, like things that I learned that might be useful for, trials in a district court, I don't want to be too political here, but there are particular judges who have different preferences and are known for certain things. And I did get some insight from how different companies view judges. We tried to stay pretty neutral as outside counsel. I practiced before all sorts of judges, but there definitely are things in-house that different companies worry about for certain jurisdictions or certain judges or certain, certain types of plaintiffs that were useful for me to see and get some exposure just to a different perspective.
Okay. And then going back to like the different cultural preferences in-house, are there any preferences or fun snacks or rituals or anything that you kind of miss that's different back now that you're back in the firm?
Yeah, snacks is a huge one. There was a barista where I was at. It was all free. It was very nice. We don't have that. There's a Starbucks very close to our office. It's a very close second, but not quite there. The thing that I missed at first was video conferencing. The company that I was at loved video conferencing. Everybody did video all the time. There was no, you could call somebody on the phone, but the preference was always, face to face if you could do it, and cameras always on. And going back to kind of like telephone culture was a bit weird at first, and I missed it. But now, luckily, with the, I hate to say luckily and then refer to a pandemic, but one of the positives I think has been that, now here we all are on Zoom, and that's become mainstream across the board. So that was something that I missed for, a brief 2 months, or 3 or 4 while everybody was getting up to speed. But that's something that I no longer have to miss. I missed, there's definitely a lot of collegiality at law firms, especially on particular litigation teams, but we don't often sit down together and talk about everybody else's cases. And so I really enjoyed, I think they were bi-weekly team meetings where we would kind of go around and say, what are you working on? What are you seeing? How can we all give input from what we're seeing on our cases to help with yours? And I thought that was something that was very effective, and makes a lot of sense when you're trying to have a consistent front that you're putting forward as the company, to have a lot of communication between those teams. But I think it's something that law firms don't do as often. I don't often get, what are you seeing in your cases? How can it help on mine kind of discussions, except from certain people, where maybe I do, but not as a big group. And so that was something that I felt was really effective. And I'm considering ways now that we're talking about it, that maybe I can implement, getting some broader perspective in firm cases as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, do you not see as much of the preferences versus like judges and I'm trying to think, like, yeah, judges or anything like that? Now that you're in the firm, it's not as much of an issue because you still deal with, I guess, varying issues that you're pretty, I guess, yeah, you would be more neutral.
Yeah, so I guess to go back to that point, what I was trying to get at was, when you are a large company that frequently finds themselves before certain judges, you really have to be sure that you are preserving your reputation, because, it's not like people don't normally look and say, oh, okay, firm A, and then one attorney does something stupid, and then all of firm A is thrown under the bus. Like that, it has to be very severe for something like that to happen, or like a one-person law firm. But when you see a company's name on the, in the case headers, and that judge then sees the same company's case after case after case and dislikes some sort of tactic that's done in one, you don't want to tarnish your reputation as a company. And so that was a concern that, of course, as a lawyer, you don't want to tarnish your reputation before a judge either, but it's much bigger as a company, where one person in one case could do something, and, down the line, it could come back to really cause problems. And so that concern for how do we make sure that we are not biasing, prejudicing these judges against us, and how do we make sure that we're doing everything we can so that they see us as a good litigation participant, was interesting to see from the company perspective instead of just a lawyer or law firm perspective.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of your perspective on how there's multiple cases and they all have to kind of follow along with like the brand integrity or following the company's values, and I guess making sure that, yeah, what they are fighting for or going into trial with is consistent with what they have done in the past or what they really want to strive for.
Right. Everything just has much bigger and far-reaching impacts. It felt like to me, and that's not to say that I don't think like, well, if I do something, inappropriate here, 3 cases down, the judge is gonna be like, aren't you that person that did that dumb? Like, of course, but it's a much bigger level when you're trying to steer a full corporation, and you have media that's chiming in with perspectives, and you have, not just patent cases, at least my perspective is just patent cases, but you have, consumer product cases or class action lawsuits or privacy cases, or, whatever it may be. There's just a lot more cogs in the machine, and any kind of, and anything can have a pretty big ripple effect. It felt like to me.
Yeah, did you have to deal with like media and worrying about like, I guess, more public affairs and what goes on with media when you were working in-house?
So I did not see too much of it myself. But some of this goes back to the fact that I was also an employee of a law firm. So there were certain kind of more sensitive issues that I was not always privy to. So this isn't to say in-house counsel do not deal with this. I'm sure they do, even though I didn't. But what I did see, I mentioned participating in, notice and comment on proposed legislation and amicus briefs to various courts for important kind of, issues from a statute and kind of rule of law perspective. Those were very, very closely examined by a lot of different people. to make sure that it's lining up. You can't just have one person writing one brief over here that's going to, the patent office, and somebody over here doing something different. Like, it requires a lot of effort to coordinate, and a lot of different types of lawyers' input to, make sure that everything, the pieces of the puzzle all fit together. It was just mind-boggling to me, and made me appreciate how difficult the job really is, to see how many moving parts there are, and how you have to try to get everything to line up together, to present this, unified front, and hopefully make progress in the areas where it's important, without hindering, progress over, on a different issue.
Yeah. And would you say that, was it hard for you to have progress in-house while at the same time missing what you were doing at the firm? So did you feel as if, like, there is an opportunity cost when you go in-house? Did you feel like, was there like a fear of missing out by not being at the firm?
Yeah, there always, I think, is a concern when you put your effort somewhere that maybe it would be better spent somewhere else. So you only have so much time, and you have to choose what you think is best. I had a lot of concerns that, like I've said, I wasn't doing a lot of writing, and what I do normally nowadays is sit and write stuff all day long. And so I did have a lot of concerns that, when you don't use something daily, perhaps you're losing some of the skill, or at least not advancing it. I did find, however, that, maybe it was true, and maybe I fell behind a bit, or maybe I lost a little bit of what I had gained. I do feel like the skills that I gained were more important than what I lost.
Mhm.
But keep in mind, I was only out for 5 months. So at the end of 5 months, there was a suggestion, do you want to stay longer? Do you want to stay another 5 months? And at that point in time, I felt like perhaps the opportunity cost would be too high, to be away from 5 months, and to miss 5 months of experience, because I also wasn't taking depositions, and I wasn't preparing for arguments, for me to do them. And I wasn't doing a lot of these things that I do nowadays, and I needed to continue developing and advancing. So 5 months I felt was good. A year or more, I was concerned that maybe it wouldn't be as much. It probably still would have been fine, but I was more nervous about it. People go and do clerkships for a year or two, and are always fine, and have built, fantastic skill sets that you can't get if you don't do it. And so it probably would have been fine, but I do feel like the 5 months experience that I had outweighed whatever I had missed in my, normal day job.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's good to find the right balance of being able to take an opportunity, but also knowing, okay, this is different from what I am doing every day. And being able to also go back and still appreciate what you do every day, and not missing too much, I guess, the in-house work.
Right. There are the snacks, though. The barista is a big.
That sounds like a great perk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll let it's about 10 minutes till 7, so we can get any last minute questions, but we also have a very fun wine raffle from Scout and Cellar. So we will have a magic hat that Caitlin will be able to do, and let's figure out who is going to get this Scout and Cellar wine. Ooh, okay. Jess M. Then next we will notify the raffle winner. Well, thank you, Kara. I have learned so much, and I'm hoping that those participating learned as well. Do you have any takeaways from this conversation that you'd like to leave?
Yeah, I guess what I want everybody to take away is that, a secondment or any other kind of opportunity that presents could be a great opportunity to learn something new, advance your career, and meet some new people. And those are all things that make me very nervous. And yet here I am telling you how great it is. So hopefully, this can give other people some insight and confidence to try something new. But thank you for having me. And if anybody watching has questions, you can reach out to me at any time. I'm happy to talk about anything.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, that concludes our webinar.